Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the September 21st, 2017 meeting of the San Francisco SRO Task Force. My name is Rosemary Bosky, chair of the task force. This meeting is being audio recorded, so I would like to remind everyone to turn off or turn to silent their electronic devices. And when they speak, if they could indicate their name so that we could get that on the audio recording, that would be great. We do have a quorum. It is 9:10 in the morning. And with that, I would like to move to agenda item number 3, which is approval of the minutes from the August 17th, 2017 meeting. And these are brief action minutes because, as I indicated, these meetings are being audio recorded. So are there any comments? Jordan?
There are a couple of typos. Chirag's name was spelled wrong, and
Thank you.
And collaboratives was spelled wrong. Just a few typos, and other than that, looks good.
Thank you. Any other comments or amendments from the membership on the minutes from the August 17th meeting? We'll give you a minute or two to take a look at that. So with those typos corrected, is there a motion to approve the minutes as corrected?
Motion.
Motion by Dan. Is there a second? Second by Wolfgang. All those in favor, can I have a show of hands? Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. The minutes from the August 17th meeting are adopted. Now moving on to agenda item number 4. Before we go any further, I would like everybody to introduce themselves, and before we do, I do want to take the opportunity to introduce Jennifer Choi to the membership. She is a long-standing and very valuable deputy city attorney that we have worked with for a number of years. She is here as the legal advisor to the task force for Peter Keith, who could not be with us today. Thank you, Jennifer, for coming. So, Rosemary Bosky, chair of the meeting.
Nicole Racine, DBI.
Devon, DBI.
Jordan Davis, tenant rep.
Wolfgang Struble, homelessness and supportive housing.
Bruce Burge, SRO operator. Sam Patel, SRO operator.
Clifford Gilmore, Intercity Collaborative.
Diana Martinez from Mission SRO Collaborative.
Jennifer Choi, San Francisco City Attorney's Office.
Dan Jordan, tenant rep.
Thank you all. So the first announcement I want to make, and also by way of a thank you, is to Nicole for being our administrative backbone to the task force. She has been promoted, so she will be leaving the housing division. We will miss her greatly, but we offer her great success. And she will be elsewhere in DBI. She's going to the 3rd floor to the records management division. And she won't be far, but she won't be available to us. So that's why we have Devon here today, who will be one of the individuals who will be assisting us with the task force in the future. So welcome, Devon. And so that's that announcement. The other announcement I have, and I don't have that much information for you because of the avalanche of legislation that's been coming out for the last several years, last at least 2 to 3, there is some new legislation that is being proposed by Supervisor Peskin. And let me give you the file number. It's file number 170871. 170871. And this particular legislation went to the Building Inspection Commission yesterday. I was not at that meeting. I was at a CalBO meeting, and it is proposing a change to the residential hotel sprinkler ordinance. Now, the supervisor hasn't contacted me to put this on the agenda, and as things are going through the legislative process, they're subject to change. It looks like this will be going to the Land Use and Communications Subcommittee. But that can change, and the legislation can change over a period of time. Right now, it appears that is proposing to change the housing code and the fire code to require a residential hotel upon sale after August 1st of this year, that the building would have to demonstrate to the fire department, and I'm paraphrasing, you'd want to look at the legislation, that the building is in compliance with NFPA 13, the 2016 edition. Now, what is in the code presently is the 1999 edition, and that is based on the residential hotel sprinkler ordinance that went into effect back in 2001. Okay, so what they're proposing is to change the date to 2016. Now, from my understanding from the fire department, the significance is it would require sprinklering of the commercial area. And I don't know, I was not party to any of this discussion. I just saw the legislation for the first time last week. So what it looks like when it goes to land use, if it stays in land use, I just am letting you all know if you want to take a look at that. The person that is the administrative secretary to the Land Use and Transportation Committee is Erica Major. Her phone number is 554-4441. So I just want to let you know, this is, legislation comes through quickly, and that's what I know about that. I would leave that to the group. And those are my two bits of announcements. Is there any discussion about that? Is there any other membership announcements? So this would be a good time if anybody else has any announcements they wish to make. Sure.
I have a question. Have you heard anything more about the gender-neutral bathroom thing?
No, I have not. I don't know what the current status is of it. As I said, it's very difficult to keep up on the status of all this. What I would say is if anybody knows what the Board of Supervisors file number is on that, you can always look online. If you want me to do that, I'm more than happy to try and find out what the current status is. But once it's at the board, that's really where I encourage everybody to make contact with the secretary of that particular committee to find out what's going on, because I can't always keep track of all this. So, but on that one, since it's amending the housing code, I can try and find out for you. But in the interim, looking online or calling that particular secretary to that subcommittee will give you the most recent information, because keep in mind this legislation is constantly being changed and amended, and so that would give you what the latest would be on that. So, any other discussion? Wolfgang.
Just a quick question. Wolfgang Stüber, Homelessness and Supportive Housing. A quick question on the sprinkler ordinance. Is that upon sale?
Yes, I believe it's being, at least that's what it was, last week. What it is as it moves forward, I don't know. But it seemed to be triggered upon sale after August 1st of this year. And I can't really give you what the legislative background is on this.
If I might just ask, how could they were just going to retroactively say August 1st? I mean,
Pardon me?
it's not an ordinance yet, right?
No.
So
No.
they're just going to retroactively say August 1st?
Well, generally, that's a good question, Sam. Generally, when they're amending, right now, that ordinance was a retroactive ordinance. The 2001 residential sprinkler ordinance, when it was adopted, what was retroactively applied to existing residential hotels. It was put in the housing code and it was put in the fire code. And so with this legislation, which is a blip in time, right, it's moving through a process, a public process, is suggesting is to amend that ordinance by changing the nature of the provision from the standards that were from the National Fire Protection Agency the 1999 version of the standard 13 to the 2016, and those standards aren't changed every year, but periodically.
I get that, I
Yeah.
understand that. My question is, let's say, for example, I'm selling my property, I'm already in the contract.
Uh-huh.
Now, there isn't, August 1st has obviously gone past. So if I close escrow now, and if this thing goes into law, one of us has to pay for this, which has never been contemplated.
Well, the
Never-
issue
it
would
hasn't
be,
been, dealt with.
the issue would be,
the-
when does the ordinance go into effect? If the ordinance doesn't go into effect, say it went into effect 6 months from now,
Mhm.
you had your sale before that ordinance went into effect. So, but the issue would be is once the ordinance is into effect, all sales that occur after August 1st would probably
That's
fall
what I'm
within
saying,
that.
so there isn't.
Right, I
It's
cannot
just-
tell you why it's saying August 1st,
Yeah.
except that when it was drafted, you know, when the city attorney gets the assignment to draft these things, it's usually sometime before the legislator introduces it. So again, I give you that information so that my best advice would be to talk to the supervisor or the legislative aide, because these things can move from committee to committee, it could change, that date can change. You know, I hear what you're saying, but I have no more information than that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not foreseeable for you right now as you're entering contract. It's not a law.
Well,
So
that's what I
even
mean.
if-
Not a law.
It could come back, and I could be, let's say, I'm the seller and the buyer, we could end up in court over this, because the ordinance says August 1st.
It does, but the ordinance hasn't taken effect.
What
So
time you say?
contractually, you couldn't have said that this is something that you could have foreseen, because legislation dies in committees all the time.
Well, I get that, but there's a specific date here, that's what my concern is.
It's not at the close or the introduction of the ordinance, it says any sale after August 1st, if he closes next week and the ordinance passes and becomes law in October, I think you're on the hook.
I bet you if you either called Erica Major or somehow got involved and did public comment to mention that discrepancy, that they've just changed the date.
There you go.
We've tried that.
Okay, try it again. We try it a lot sometimes.
I mean, it
we
could have
fail,
been
but
that
do
when
it
they
again.
contemplated this legislation, it was in January.
Right,
So
yeah.
at that time, they were looking forward, and August was a forward date. So that could be that date hasn't changed. Who knows? It is odd that they would retroactively impose something. But again, you might want to give the secretary a call and see what's going on with that.
Okay, so that's that announcement. We had some new members, or some members recently join us. So we are on agenda item number 4, administrative announcements. I don't have any others. Are there any other announcements that any of the members wish to make at this time? There being none, is there any public comment on agenda item number 4? Okay, so then we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is discussion of possible installation of grab bars in private and semi-private bathrooms and SROs. So we do have for you the handout, which was very beautifully done by the Mayor's Office of Disability when the original ordinance amended the housing code to retroactively require grab bars in the common bathrooms of residential hotels. So this item was asked by one of the members, or more than one of the members, to be put on today's agenda. Before we begin the discussion, let me maybe try and provide some framework to the discussion, just for an initial in an initial context, and that is the Department of Building Inspection doesn't necessarily know the location or the number of private or semi-private bathrooms in residential hotels. But when I say semi-private, I'm talking about there are some bathrooms in some of the residential hotels that are configured in a way that that say two guest rooms are sharing one bathroom, and its specific uses for those 2 units. And then there are, and I don't know if there are any that are more than 2, but there are also then private bathrooms that are specifically used, that are within suite, we're in the particular guest room and for the use of the occupant of that residential guest room. And where those are, sitting here today, the department doesn't know the extent, so that may be part of the discussion. I will also tell you that when this ordinance was being drafted, there was some initial discussion about whether it should be extended to these private and semi-private bathrooms. And at that time, which is now 2, 3, 4 years ago, it was decided not to pursue that. Not that it wasn't a valuable thing to do. It was that at the time the focus was on addressing the common bathrooms. So with that, I will open this up for discussion. Jordan?
Well, I live, although it's not like, basically most SROs basically have common bathrooms, like no private bathrooms. Some have like semi-private bathrooms. Some have a mix of like rooms with private bathrooms and rooms without bathrooms and a common bathroom. And some have like all private. Some have all private bathrooms. A couple examples. I live in the Heartland Hotel in a unit that has a in-suite bathroom. Most of Heartland's rooms have in-suite bathrooms. And there are of course common bathrooms to serve those that are not that don't have the in-suite bathrooms. I believe the Mayfair, which is another THC property, also has like all in-suite bathrooms in their place. And basically what often happens is like people who are placed in these private bathrooms have to go through a reasonable accommodation process, which usually goes into like stuff around disability, and also like gender transitioners also request reasonable accommodations due to the need for a private bathroom for surgical purposes. And it's like it's kind of an opaque process. Some people get it, some people don't. But the big issue here is that I don't have a private bathroom in my hotel. Though I have a private bathroom, I do not have a grab bar. And I was informed by several tenant organizers that I would be on my own for it. And some people have even recommended that they have grab bars with suction cups, which elementary school physics will tell you that is not a good idea. Now, I know there's like, my thing is like, you know, there might be some like legal maneuvering that may have to happen, but I believe this is possible. I believe this is something that's necessary, and I think we should do something about this.
Thank you. Any other member discussion? Sam?
Rosemary, you probably know this answer, but how many, in order to install these grab bars, what is necessary that has to be done? Because there are certain criteria you have to have of how many pounds of force that has to be applied for it to be hold and everything. So
yes, there is. And some of that is in this handout that we've given everybody. And this was what the requirements were at the time that the previous legislation went through the process. That could have changed. These did require permits to be installed, and there were some variations proposed because, as we all know, these bathrooms have an assortment of configurations, and putting grab bars can be a tight fit sometimes. So the other thing, though, and Sam, we can look at this, and if I can't answer that today, because I used to have that memorized, I have to get back to you on that. The other thing, though, to mention is that the installation of these grab bars was not meant to completely change the configuration of these bathrooms into that being accessible under the building code Chapter 11 and 11A of the California Building Code. This was only to add grab bars because, as we all know, this did not trigger those requirements, and some of these existing bathrooms, the majority of them probably could not comply with that. But there was a certain amount of force that it had to demonstrate. And I can get back to you on that because I don't recall what it was, but it may be in this information. But again, that is something, being how they're attached, where they're attached, what the grippable surface is, how they're mounted, and that's why, and the Mayor's Office of Disability understood these challenges, and that's why this was put together. I'd imagine it would need to be updated if the jurisdiction wanted to pursue this at this point with respect to the private and semi-private bathroom. Sam?
So if from what I remember, we went through this. I think it's over 300 pounds.
It was what?
It's over 300 pounds of.
I think I think you were right. I think it was about that 250, 300.
300. So
right.
In order to install these grab bars, you basically have to tear apart a wall, put a backing to do this, and we're talking about private bathrooms that need to do this. This I don't believe is feasible for an SRO hotel owner to go through this. And our policy, which may be something that everybody can look into, is if somebody has a reasonable accommodation request for something like that, then maybe look at it on a case-by-case basis, not just blindly say, okay, well, this has to be in every bathroom, because not everybody needs it that much. I don't have a grab bar in my bathroom. I don't need it at this time. At this time.
At this time.
I will say, like, this goes to issues of universal design. I don't believe we should, like, and also that a lot of people who need grab bars the most are those in private bathrooms, because oftentimes there's a disability-related reason. So I just believe that I don't care if we have to, like, if, like, we decide to, like, move forward with this, like, we do a supplemental to, like, help fund the construction, because a lot of it is going to be a one-time investment, and I just believe that this is possible, and I just believe that it's necessary, and you can't put a price on accessibility.
Thank you, and for the record, that was Jordan Davis. So I do recall, Sam, that there was some training and some work that the Mayor's Office of Disability did with respect to giving property owners some alternate installation methods. And if you look at the second page, there actually were some diagrams of some of that. But I hear what you're saying as far as that's concerned. Obviously, this is just some general discussion. Any legislation that would be proposed would have to be sponsored by a supervisor. So with respect to that, that would definitely be something that I'm not sure if there's a supervisor out there that's willing to supervise this at this time. There may be, but that would be something that I would leave to the discussion of the membership. Mr. Bruce.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Bruce Burge, operator. So I may have missed something here earlier on. Is there proposed legislation now, or are we just having a discussion about this?
There is not any that I'm aware of. This is just a discussion of whether this is something that the jurisdiction should look at.
Is there some reason this wouldn't be applied to apartments, tourist hotels, private houses? Why just SRO hotels?
It's possible, but that's not what this particular task force is charged with. I think the reason why we're talking about it is because the current law applies specifically to the common bathrooms of residential hotels. It didn't apply to single-family dwellings or apartment buildings. because they typically don't have common bathrooms. So I think that's where we find ourselves in this particular situation. And to reiterate the history to the membership, there was some initial discussion about this, and it was determined, at least at that, not that it shouldn't be done, but at that particular point in time, not to pursue this. So, Tony.
Yeah, I'm
We have
with
a-
Senior in Disability Action. My name is Tony. I'll make this brief.
And for the record, I'm going to go ahead, because of his expertise, I'm going to go ahead and, he's a guest, but I'm going to go ahead and recognize him for that, Tony.
Yeah, our organization was part of the writing
Right.
of the ordinance, so.
Right, exactly.
I'm with a couple of people around this table. I want to thank Jordan for bringing this up as a topic, as an agenda item. I'm not a grab bar expert. I don't know much about, poundage per square foot, 300, not needing it now as opposed to needing it when you do need it. Those are a lot of issues. But what I can say is that there are a lot of folks that we work with who live in SROs that are older. And that's the reality. I mean, these folks are older and they're very vulnerable to falls. I know quite a few actually that have fallen. We had a member that fell and injured her hip quite severely. So, we are open to discussion for anything that would ameliorate or lessen. Because I know that that's an issue in bathrooms. I mean, that's a given. With people that already have a disability or are seniors, or a combination of senior with a disability.
I will say that being on the faculty for some of the conferences that have come through the Bay Area, falls are one of the biggest health concerns, one of the biggest dangers, and the greatest area to fall in it is a bathroom. And since we do have individuals aging in place in residential hotels, it is a significant concern.
Mm-hmm. This is Diana Martinez.
Thank you,
for the
Diana.
record. It's true. There are a lot of people who are aging in the SROs, and we do find people with different health problems in the SROs. So I do definitely, I can back that assessment up, since we do a lot of outreach in the SROs, and we see that this is a huge part of the population. And I would also like to point out, in terms of the reasonable accommodation suggestion, it is a good suggestion, but then I started to think about the fact that regardless of whether you are, if you have mobility issues, or if you are one of our elders, even if you're a young person, you can still fall in the bathroom and need to grab onto something. One of my coworkers fell in the bathroom and now walks with a cane, and that was years and years ago. So this should be looked at as preventative as well as reactive.
So, may I ask you a question? Do you have a grab bar in your bathroom?
In my bathroom, I have actually something that holds the towel up, and I grab onto that if
That's
I
not
need
a
to.
grab bar.
Yeah, I know.
That's
It's not a
bar.
grab bar.
So you
But I
don't
do
one,
have
right?
something
So-
to grab onto. But if I wanted one, I could talk to my landlord about it,
That's
you
what I
know?
said.
Or you could install one.
Hmm. So it's not about me. This is not about me. I don't even live in an SRO or in San Francisco. I just represent the Mission SRO Collaborative and the people I meet there. But I will say that I think it's important to have these grab bars, It doesn't matter whether I have one in my bathroom or not, because we're not representing the people that live in my apartment.
You mentioned that young people need it also. That's why I was asking.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you're young, so I asked you a question.
That's fine.
Hey, Sam, you don't look that old.
Well,
How old are you, Sam?
Wolfgang?
65.
Wolfgang Stuber, Homelessness and Supportive Housing. Just a clarification question. If the mayor signed it, the Board of Supervisors passed it, is it not an ordinance? Is it not in effect?
There is currently the San Francisco Housing Code, I believe it's Chapter 5, was amended about 2 years ago by the board to require retroactively that grab bars be installed within toilet rooms, bathrooms, and shower rooms, the common toilet rooms, bathrooms, and shower rooms of all residential hotels. It did not apply, that amendment to the San Francisco Housing Code did not apply to other residential uses, apartment buildings, or single and two-family units. So that is in existence right now, and the handout that you have was part of the outreach for that legislation. At the time that legislation was being discussed, the issue came up of whether or not it should apply in that legislation to the private and semi-private bathrooms in residential hotels, and it was determined that it not be pursued at that particular point in time. Not that it wasn't necessarily needed or a good thing, it was just not part of that legislation. So the membership had asked, or some of the members asked, to put it on today's agenda to flush out what the issues are surrounding it. So that's what we're doing right now, is to flush that out, to revisit the issue, to see whether or not it's something moving forward that is valuable, and that whether that, and what form, if the membership so chooses, what form that would then be in moving forward to the Board of Supervisors. Obviously, any of the individuals here or any of the groups that they represent are free at any point in time to discuss this issue with a supervisor and see if they would sponsor legislation. But this is given the charge of the task force. We're just having a general discussion, and the points that you and Sam have made about the feasibility, etc., are salient points to this whole discussion. Jordan.
I just want to clarify that there's no legislation yet. Barbara Lopez from Jane Kim's office has expressed that she believes that this is feasible. She's we had a long talk about it about a couple weeks ago, and we believe that this is an easy fix, and this is a pretty easy fix, and going to the point of certain wall backing to the wall, this whole ordinance, the whole initial ordinance, and I would imagine that any potential ordinance would be flexible, because let's face it, these are old bathrooms, and there needs to be some kind of flexibility to but not while not sacrificing safety. So it's striking that balance, and what we're trying to also and what I'm also might seek as well is maybe I don't know how the sort of supplemental or budget process would be, but they have a elevator rebate being worked on with the Mayor's Office of Disability. We fleshed that out with Senior and Disability Action, and I think there might be something to help. There might be a little maybe there could be a way to sort of seed the installation of get some seed money for the installation of grab bars in these private bathrooms. And we've got 136 units in my building, and 100 of them have private bathrooms. So I mean, it could be possible, and yet I just don't know how I would get one.
That raises some issues, and that is the other historical fact that I do want to mention, although my director probably wouldn't want me to, just kidding, is that when the initial legislation went through the process, our commission was so supportive of this that the Department of Building Inspection waived its fees for the permit. Now, it didn't have the ability to waive the permit fees for the other city agencies, but it did for DBI, provided that the permits were filed by a certain within a certain period after the ordinance went into effect. So that then encouraged people to get those permits in, and we tried to work with everybody to encourage those installations to take place. So that would be, in addition to going to the supervisor, that would be an approach that somebody could make to our commissioners. Deborah Walker is the representative on the Building Inspection Commission that represents tenants, who is very supportive of this, but the commission was as a whole. So that's just a historical footnote. The other issue surrounding this would then be how the ordinance would be constructed and then next steps. If you've had an initial discussion with Supervisor Kim's office, that may be something that you or a group may want to approach them and see if they would be interested in sponsoring any legislation and perhaps bringing it back to this group. Obviously, you know, there is the feasibility, and the other thing to consider is it's one thing, as far as the challenge is, it's one thing to install these in the common bathrooms. It then is a little bit different a task to start installing them within the private and semi-private bathrooms as far as getting access into those rooms to go ahead and do that. So it's just something to consider. It would be one of those issues that you know, would be of consider.
Yes, Clifford Gilmore, Central City SRO Collaborative.
Thank you.
I wanted to say, and with general discussion, I really appreciate the different perspectives that are part of this discussion. I also think that I'm sure there's some information about the tracking in terms of slips and falls and whatnot. I think that would be also helpful to our discussion and future discussion as to some of the data around that. Because if we forecast going forward, yes, we do have people who are aging in place, and something for a lot of these people, this is permanent housing. But I do think whatever additional information we can have to help sort of balance all of this going forward, I think will be helpful to the discussion.
Thank you, and that I will tell you, if I can speak for the deputy city attorneys who write this legislation that I talk with a lot, that's really important information for the legislative digest. We need to have a threshold, like when Jordan just talked about, there's 100 of these bathrooms in a nonprofit, in a building that's being managed by a nonprofit provider. Then we've also got the nonprofit issue here of the cost to those buildings as well, right? And so these would be things moving forward that this group would have this information or be able to touch upon it that I might not. And so moving forward, if you're to go to a supervisor, you know, with some discussion about this individually or collectively, this would be important information for them to have. Sam?
So, talking from the feasibility part of it, taking that example of 100 rooms, each bathroom is going to cost between $4,000 to $6,000. Okay, so keep that in mind. When we talk
Thank you.
about
Good information.
I mean, that's because in order to put a grab bar in a shower, you have to take that wall off. You cannot just put a surface mount grab bar on there because wood is going to deteriorate and you're going to have the same problem. So you have to put it inside the wall. So you got to take the walls off in order to put these shower grab bars on. You can't put them in otherwise. So it's between $4,000 to $6,000 each unit. We're not talking about just common bathrooms. You know, we did it, and because there are only a small amount. But when you talk about hundreds of bathrooms, we're talking about a lot of money. So if we are going to go to the mayor to ask for money, we're going to have to ask for about $10 million. So,
Dan?
I mean, it's reality.
Dan
Thank you,
Jordan. My experience in working with the collaborative as a peer counselor, it's difficult to get the nonprofits to fix simple little things in the rooms, much less going through the expense of $4,000 to $5,000 to install a grab bar in a private bathroom. They just simply will not do it.
Thank you.
This is Diana Martinez.
Thank you,
again.
Diane.
I do have a question. Now that you mentioned that you kind of have to replace the whole wall or take down the wall and then kind of rebuild. It sounds like you've done this in your hotel.
We've done several.
Okay, so maybe you'll be able to help answer this since you've gone through the process before. When you do have to kind of take down the wall and replace, did that trigger any having to move the tenant next door out of their unit because the wall was down temporarily?
Have to. Relocation is a big problem and a big issue with this. So you have to relocate, or there's reduction in services. You have to shut their bathroom down. There's a lot of things involved in this thing. It's not just simple.
Mhm.
And relocation basically means, if it's somebody who's elderly, it's $8,000 to relocate that person for 20 days.
Okay, and then the other question I had about that is, well, no, this wouldn't apply because it's private bathroom. So I guess that was my one question. So that is something to think about, I suppose.
I
Raul.
have a question. I just want to see the scope that this would affect. In most of the Chinatown SROs that I know, they do not have toilets or showers in the room. It's just simply an SRO without any amenities. So the number of shared bathroom or actually individual bathroom or toilets in the units are really few. I don't know, but as hotel operators, you might have huge hotels in which you have units that's like you mentioned 100 units. That's not really often seen. I don't know how big is this going to be affected. Like, are there hundreds of buildings with these bathrooms in it, or is this a small size? But that's what the scope that I'm looking for. And then also, because we have experience in installing wet bars, I just want to see how long does it take for the project to complete? Like, does it take a week or a couple days, or how long will it take to install these wet bars?
If I may answer, Rosemary?
Yes, please, Sam.
So, the timing, it's gonna take more than a week, because I have to demo the walls out, put in the blocking and everything, call for inspections, make sure that the blocking is correct, put everything back, call for inspections again. So, it might take between 2 to 3 weeks just per bathroom in order to do these things. It's not, like I said, it's not simple. Taking down a shower wall, taking it all down basically, and installing, everything has to be inspected. And Rosemary can tell you that building inspection requires inspections to be done on these things. It's not just, oh, well, just put it in.
And as a perspective, we have 6 master leases. Traditionally, we had 6 master leases that the city held for direct access to housing. 2 of those, about 100 unit building, 90 to 100 unit buildings have bathrooms, and one of them is a mix, so it's about 50%.
So if I could remind everyone to state their name for the record, that was Angela Chu who did that for initial discussion. Raul, you had your hand up. Did you have something to add?
Yes, thank you. So Raul Fernandez Rosado with the SRO Families United Collaborative. Just to respond to you, Sam, I was just looking at the conventional installation method. So it suggests that sometimes requires the removal of the wall, but not every time, right? I also echo what Angela said, that it's not like we're talking in one hotel 100 bathrooms, but in one hotel perhaps 4 bathrooms. Many of these bathrooms are shared. And I also acknowledge your perspective, right? Because I understand it's an investment for SRO operators, so I acknowledge that part. I think it would be important to perhaps have like a cost analysis of something like this, in order to have an informed discussion. And also to echo what Diana was saying, it's like accidents can happen to young people, or you could be young and whatnot, or maybe you had a surgery, right? Things of that nature. So I think that is a one-time investment that is just gonna pay for life. And if that something installing a grab bar saves one accident or a fatality, it's a really good investment.
The other thing I do want to mention, I will tell you, when I travel, if I go into a hotel and I don't have a grab bar, I'm very, very nervous because I'm afraid of falling. That's just me, as a 61-year-old woman who's kind of clumsy. But one of the other things to consider here is the fact that we know, DBI does know where the common bathrooms are. So when we're doing a typical inspection, a complaint, or a routine inspection, we're typically looking at the common bathrooms. because we don't know where the private and private bathrooms are, the code enforcement of potential legislation in this area would be different. It would be complaint driven, right? Because we can't necessarily go and check each of these buildings to know where these bathrooms are, and then access is a sensitive matter as well. So just understand that if legislation were pursued, given the nature of where these units were, and I'm not saying it shouldn't, that would be something to consider. I just want you to be aware, since we're looking at all facets of this. So if I just want to summarize, I'm not going to, we can continue to discuss this, but right now, what we're looking at is, one, needing to have some sense of where these bathrooms are and how many. Two, the financial impact to both the for-profit and the nonprofit buildings that are providing this housing. Three is the time frame for installation and possible relocation. And four would be enforcement. And then the last thing would be what the next steps would be once information like that was obtained, how this would be approached. And I guess that would lead to any conclusions or recommendations. And as I said, any group or individual is free to talk with the supervisors on doing this. So those are some of the summaries, but I don't want to stop the discussion. Any other discussion? Jordan? Thank you.
Yeah, I was about to mention that it would be a complaint-based process, which would mean it would be much more... basically, what I want to do is shift this from grab bars from being a reasonable accommodation to being a requirement, and that it would basically be a gradual phase-in of the process. And if I'm speaking to the bathroom being out of commission, I live in one of those mixed buildings, so if I probably had, I don't know if I could do this, but if someone had to go in my bathroom and do a lot of work on it, I could just use the common bathroom. I'm not sure if there's you would necessarily need to totally leave the unit if there's basically work being done in your bathroom, or just use the common bathroom. So it's I don't know what would be necessary there, but like I said, I'm also willing to look into rebates, some kind of rebate program, or some kind of funding to help this, because this is going to be largely it'll be an expense, but it'll be a one-time thing. So it'll be really so it'll really pay, to your point, it will really pay for itself. And I am definitely going to talk to Bobby from Jane Kim's office to basically flesh out. I'm going to bring all your comments to the office, and we're going to discuss this further. I don't know whether Supervisor Kim is going to pick this up, but she is my supervisor, and a lot of these hotels are actually in her district, and frankly, there aren't many hotels that would be affected by potential legislation, Heartland, the Royan, the Mayfair, out of THC's portfolio, if that's reflective of SROs in this city, it's relatively few hotels have this issue. So it's a few hotels, a big expense, but if we can get the city to chip in some funding to help get into compliance, I would be all for that.
Okay, and I'm going to take the comments. One of the things that I would like, though, based on where the discussion's gone so far, is to ask each of the SRO collaboratives and the for-profit providers if, when we come to the next meeting, if you can possibly ask your members, or if the buildings that you're aware of and the providers that you work with, if you can get some sense of the buildings that may have these private or semi-private bathrooms within them, how many there might be, and so we can get some sense of that for perhaps our future discussion on this item. So Bruce, with that.
I'm sorry, Rosemary, this is purely anecdotal, but I know of 2 buildings that we have control over, 164 total rooms. All of them are private bath. There are no common area bathrooms.
See, right there, that's a big.
So it's a huge,
Right.
huge
And so that would be the
problem.
kind of information to have, so that we at least have the numbers going forward. Because if we got an inquiry from one of the supervisors, that would be useful to know. Sam?
I have 2 buildings, both of them are master leased. Both of them are 200 units total. All of them have private bathrooms, no common bathrooms.
Dan?
Dan Jordan, while listening to this, I did the math just for your hotel, which is the Heartland, $1.5 million. Not too many people are going to want to throw away that kind of money, nor do they have that kind of money to put out.
However, Jordan Davis again. However, I will say that it will probably be a trickle, because I don't imagine like 100 tenants are gonna like, unless they're really sadistic, are gonna really want to basically file the complaints at the same time. Grab bars are not something you pay attention to until you need them. So it'll be a gradual trickle over many years and probably several budget cycles. So if you could, so that would help with the argument.
If you pass legislation, then it means you got to install them. It's not a trickle down, it's a do it now.
Okay, any other discussion? Cliff?
Real quickly, Clifford Gilmore. I just want to say that as far as THC is concerned, and being in the Master League program, that there's really not a lot of money in THC's budget for major building upgrades. So I do think that could be a challenge in terms of the expenditures for that agency to be able to find the money out of its existing vehicle and get it as part of the Master Lease program. That would be a challenge.
Thank you, Clifford. Okay, any other, we're going to kind of close the discussion now. It's a little after 10 and we've got some other agenda items. Any other discussion on this at this point? So what I would say is that this would be something, is it the will of the membership to continue this discussion to the next meeting that we have, October 19th? I'm seeing a show of hands. Can I have a show of hands of those? Okay, so there seems to be a majority that would like us to continue that. So I will go ahead and put this on the agenda, and whatever information, quantitative information that you could give us, if you would email that to me, and I will go ahead and we will synthesize that information. I will also talk with the experts that I have at the Department of Building Inspection as far as the cost and installation and whether there are any other opportunities with respect to that. Obviously, legislation could be structured that if it was the desire to do so, that this would be applicable as units become vacant, or there are ways that legislation can be structured. So that's something to keep in mind, that it's a possible opportunity as well. Okay, so is there any public comment regarding agenda item number 5, discussion of possible installation of grab bars in private and semi-private bathrooms and SROs? There being none, let's then move on to agenda item number 6, which is the final approval of the directory of services since the last meeting. I think Nicole got almost 40 possible revisions to this, and I want to thank you. I think you've at least made most of them or all of them as you understand them. There was a little bit of, we didn't really editorialize your recommendations, except for in some instances where how things were categorized, so we tried to focus on the general topic. Otherwise, we were going to have categories for so many things it would be difficult to find the core information. So with that, I'd like to open this up to a discussion, and keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that we are at 10:04, and so we do have a few more items. So with that, any discussion or additional recommendations regarding the directory? Wolfgang.
Wolfgang Stüber, homelessness and supportive housing. So I think we should get this out. I think this is
Thank you. I'm
nice
so happy to hear you say that.
Make public. Who owns the document? When will it get updated? So if there are changes?
That's right.
And then who is responsible for the updates?
Very good. This is a living document, and it would be, and it's so much more than what it was, and it's so comprehensive. So, is there any other discussion or any changes that you wish to make at this point in time? And
I would like to make one non-substantial change, and you can just strike this out. I don't want to continue this any further, but there is one substantial change. The mail to thing under line Martin, like, just strike that out, and that should be...
What page is that, please?
It's on page 8, so, like, it's just a brief strikeout.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, like, pretty much what I'm looking at here is, I believe that I looked this over and it looks good otherwise.
very good. Thank you. Clifford.
Yeah, Clifford Gilmore. On page 12, under landlord in the issue, it still has TC's main office house. It's where it's housed. I said in the last meeting it's going to actually come to our collaborative office, but for the sake of expediency, leave it where it is now.
Is it okay?
Just leave it there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, but thank you for that correction.
Yes.
Okay, are there any other comments about this? Then what we're going to do is we're going to date this document, and we will, through a letter to the clerk of the board, I will be distributing this to the clerk of the board, and we will then put this up on the web page for the task force, and make it available. The Department of Building Inspection will then make this available as a product of the SRO task force, and then from time to time, as the membership would like to have it revised, we will go ahead and do so. Bruce?
I think this is really quick. Nicole's fully responsible for drafting this whole thing, right? Bravo.
Thank you so much.
And the artwork, too. And it was driving her crazy. Thank you so much, Nicole, for an excellent job on this. So, all right, we will go ahead and Angela.
Angela, page 12, with the landlord tenant issues, the Chinatown Community Development Center's address and phone number needs to be changed.
Okay. Can you send me that information?
I gave you last
I think I got it last time. I must have misplaced it. Can you send it to me just one more
I
time?
can do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So, with those corrections, we will then move that forward. Do I have a motion to do that, Jordan?
I make a motion to, like, to basically move this out with the non-substantive edits.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Clifford, his hand went up first. So, okay, so we have a motion, a second. All those in favor, can I have a show of hands? Any against? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. We will go ahead and do that, and we will then share that correspondence with you before the next meeting. So the etiquette for the board is not to send direct emails. What we do is we'll be sending a letter with this attached to the clerk of the board, and then the clerk would do a distribution. We'll put this on the website, we'll date it, and we're also going to put your name on it too, because it should have your name on it, so they could do a good job. So with that, is there any public comment on this particular agenda item number 6? There being none, let's move to agenda item number 7. This is reports from the SRO Collaborative. So, are there any reports to be given at this meeting?
Okay.
Raul.
Hello, Raul Fernandez Garza with the SRO Families United Collaborative again. So we've been very active with the San Francisco Housing Authority in the implementation of the vouchers that we that our families are for themselves and advocated and are for themselves. We're moving forward these in the upcoming weeks. We're going to have a couple of meetings with the staff of the Housing Authority just to finalize details about how we're going to implement them. We're going to establish like a hybrid system in which probably 66% of the vouchers are going to be supplied on needs base, and the other 32% on lotteries, like random lotteries for families that live in SRO. Also, we've been conducting tours with the planning department. 2 days ago, right? We had one in the Mission. We're doing, this came as a result of the census report that we published a couple years ago. They were really interested in it and how to implement some of the recommendations that we have. So we're doing some tours through the different neighborhoods with the planning department, particularly keeping their main focus is common space, parks, schools, things of that nature. Also, today we're going to have another training for our organizers. It's going to be in Dolores Street Community Services. It's going to be about domestic violence and child protective services. And last but not least, we had 2 weeks ago, we had a family outing. We went with, we took about 260 families to the San Francisco Zoo, and children had a blast. It was really a fun day. Did I miss anything, Angela? Bless you.
Thank you.
Any other reports by any of the other collaboratives? Any announcements? Okay, there being none, is there any public comment on agenda item number 7? Okay, then let's move on to agenda item number 8. I will let you know I probably should have done this during the announcements, but I think it's more germane here. We do have a representative of the Commission on the Status of Women who will be coming to make a presentation at our November meeting on where the services and the topics that are provided for and under the jurisdiction of that commission intersect with some of the concerns or issues that are faced by individuals associated with SROs. So that individual will be coming to give us some information about what they provide. So that will be in November. So we also are going to have the further discussion on the grab bar installation at our next meeting. That will be our October meeting. So what are some of the other things that you would like to have for future meetings? Bruce.
Thank you, Rosemary. This may be too narrow for this board, but transient occupancy tax, TOT. I have certain buildings that have absolutely no tourist licenses. And now that the city has seen fit to terminate the ability to rent for less than 32 days, technically there's never going to be any TOT in those particular buildings, yet monthly I have to file reports, and God forbid if I miss one. Is that too narrow for this board to take up?
Not necessarily, but just because I'm not that familiar with this, could you just describe a little bit more about what we're talking about? So, and then would you want a guest speaker or somebody to come to talk about that?
From the city's tax collector office.
So you're paying hotel tax on.
Well, no.
Okay.
If I don't rent for less than 32, if I rent for less than 32 days. Technically, I'm supposed to collect the 14.5% plus the tourism and the Moscone on any rooms that are rented for less than 32 days. Anything that's permanent is exempted. Now, I understand I have some hotels that are residential and tourist, and so there's a potential that I would be renting the tourist rooms for less than 32 days, and so I need to report that. That's fine. It's a monthly report. But I have certain properties that have absolutely no tourist rooms and no potential for paying TOT, yet I still have to monthly prepare a report and send it into the city 12 times a year saying, hey, I don't owe you any money.
Oh, so it's the reporting that okay, and that's probably in the SF tax code. And so you'd like to get a little more information or possibly make them aware that based on the amendments to the Chapter 41 that there may be some other issues that need to be addressed about this reporting mechanism?
There are a number of properties that shouldn't be required to be reporting anymore on a monthly basis.
Okay.
But again, if it's too narrow, I get it.
Well, it not necessarily, but what I would need to do would be to maybe do a little bit of research with the tax collector's office on that, and then get back to you.
Fair enough. Thank you. I appreciate it.
But it's a very good point. And if you could give me a couple months to kind of
Oh,
get to them and see, and then I can come back and tell you what that might be.
Perfect.
Okay. Any other items? Jordan?
I also, first off, I just want to say it's not my intention to monopolize here, but I did have a few discussion items, immigration and immigrants and SROs. Like, I've reached out to IRC about like them coming in for the Immigrant Rights Commission to come in for a future meeting. I also got a request from Supervisor Peskin's office, specifically Sunny Angulo, for her to come in to discuss SRO-related legislation they're working on, which you probably mentioned. And I also just want to throw out there, and I know we probably down the line, and I'm not like urging to like have this, but the usage of SRO rooms as stabilization units by the hot teams, I'd like to like know more about their protocols, and I'm hoping you can invite someone from that to discuss this further, because I recently worked with someone on this, so it's just something that I think could be discussed at a much later date.
Okay, any other, thank you, any other items that anyone wishes to consider for this agenda item? Okay, I think we have enough for future meetings. Before we leave this and want to get to public comment, I just want to ask Tony if you want to mention at all your event for tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. This is the part of the program which is the shameless promotion portion of the program. And I expect everybody at this round table to be in attendance. It's a place called the Arc of San Francisco. It's located on the corner of 10th and I believe it's Howard Street. Anyway, it's going to start at 6 p.m. It's going to end at 8. We're going to have entertainment. We're going to have food. Is anybody familiar with a musician named Marcus Shelby? Okay, he's an accomplished jazz musician, internationally known. He's going to provide some entertainment. We're going to have a silent auction, meaning that you all can talk as the auction is happening. And again, it's going to be Friday, and that would be tomorrow, 6 p.m., and that would be at the Arc, and you're welcome to come and share in the festivities.
Thank you. And for those that may not know, our Senior Disability Action, and this is what, the 5th anniversary of the combining of your group and the renaming of the group. So thank you for coming, and I can't attend, but I will be addressing that issue. So is there any other public comment on our last agenda item? Okay, so there being none, I take that back. That was agenda item number 8. Is there any general public comment? That was agenda item number 9.
Can I say something?
Sure.
This is Nicole Rossini, and I just wanted to say something, this being my last meeting with you all, that the last 3 years that I've worked with this body has been amazing. I've learned a lot. I've enjoyed your company, all of you that I've spoken with, and I will miss you all very much, and I hope to keep in touch and, keep up with the changes that you guys do. It's great work, and thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We may nominate you to update this.
I know where she'll be. It won't be far. Okay, with that, we are at adjournment. Thank you all. Our next meeting is October 19th in this room at 9 a.m. Thank you all for coming.